This is the third film in a series, Banking Part 3. In this discussion, I wanted to talk about central banking and how that fits into the the fractional banking scheme. We saw in the last film how you can take essentially $10 or 10 pieces of money, and the banking system through fractional reserve can increase the amount of money that's loaned out from that 10 to roughly 45. So if you had $10, the banking system can take $10 in deposits and turn them into $45 in deposits through fractional banking. Now this particular system works as long as I don't come back to the bank, or all the depositors all at once don't come back to the bank and demand their money all at once, which they've been told they can do. So what happens if, say for instance, these banks have taken this money and loaned it out, this 4.5 times the original deposit, loaned it out into say bad loans. Say they loaned them into mortgages, bad mortgages. That's something we all can relate to today. So I hear about this. I'm standing over here and I hear about the bad loans that the bank has made, and I'm wondering, gee, if those loans don't get paid back, I'm not going to get my money back. So I go to the bank and demand my money, and all of my money. Well, all the other depositors are doing that too, because they've heard about these bad loans, and this is all the money that's left in my bank right here. So they might be able to pay me or a few other 10% of the people essentially something. Everyone else would not be able to get anything. The bank would have to close and go bankrupt because they wouldn't have the money on demand to give to the depositors or me. So how does the banking system get around these runs on the banks? What system is put in place to get around that? What has happened is a central bank was created. Now, central banks can only be created by the federal government. Here's my representation of the central bank. Creation of the federal government. It's not a private enterprise. It is kind of private, but it's controlled by the government, created by the government for a particular purpose. You notice it doesn't have anything in it. It's empty. Central banks don't have money of and by themselves. What they do have is the permission of the federal government to print money. Okay, so they don't have any money, but they can create money by itself just by making it come into being. That's what the federal government, the power that the federal government gives to the central bank. So even though they have nothing, they can create money out of nothing. Now, at the central bank, they have a window. It's called the discount window. Now what happens is the central bank, of course, doesn't have any money, but they have a discount window. And what the other banks do when they get into a situation where they have to pay out more in deposits than they have in their bank is they go to this discount window at the central bank, and the central bank just creates the money. In other words, they write them a piece of paper saying, well, this is $10 million, and they deposit it in the bank account, whatever the bank account needs to make up for their demands. So say they need $10 million to stay solvent. The central bank creates $10 million out of thin air, deposit that money into this bank, and then they would be able to pay off all the people that are trying to get their money back all at once. So that's how this scam system works. They can keep all these banks in the background here solvent, even if they're making bad loans, because those banks can always come to the central bank and borrow money at a low interest rate that the central bank has created out of nothing. Okay, now what's wrong with that? Okay, what's wrong with creating money out of nothing? Well, what's wrong with it is that when money's created out of nothing, it dilutes the money that is already out there. It makes it worth less. It causes inflation. So when the central bank does this, essentially what they're doing is they're causing all the other dollars that are out there to be worth less money. So that 10 million they've loaned out to these banks, or this bank here, whatever bank they've loaned it to, dilutes the money supply even farther and makes it worth less. So it's essentially a hidden tax on the American taxpayer, assuming we're talking about an American central bank. And that's how they keep all these banks solvent and the scam going, is just by creating money out of thin air. That's actually only a portion of what the central bank does. The central bank was created by the federal government, and it's created by the federal government for a reason, and the reason is I will make clear to you in my next film on banking, which will be part 4.